Hello and welcome to Nerd Punch's Nerd Game of Thrones, Episode 9 of Season 3. Warning: there are spoilers for all A Song of Ice and Fire books. Okay, so let's talk about this episode. Now, the first thing I think that we need to address before we get into any crazy spoilers is now that Sam has become a wizard, and I don't mean the Sam in our podcast, I mean Samwell Tarly. Now that Samwell Tarly has become a wizard, because he can read, how soon before he becomes an actual wizard? Now, I know that sounds a little nuts, but hold on a moment. Think of this. In the first season, there was actually a call-out when...
Right, no, I realized that. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, so you remember what I'm talking about. When Jud Stu and Sam are talking, and it's like, I want to be a wizard! Oh, hip hip cheerio!
He said that he always wanted to be a wizard.
Right, from all his old books and such. Now, here's the interesting thing. We really don't know in these stories about wizards or whatever, how much is actually true, what is this really a story, right?
So you're saying so it's kind of like a theory of the idea that at the Citadel, they teach you to be a wizard?
Well, remember that it's interesting because there is sort of two different things going on at the Citadel, right? There's the sort of conspiracy by the Citadel people to stop magic, and then there's the anti-conspiracy. We don't really know who, and they're trying to, actually deal with, this magic stuff. Remember, at the end of A Feast for Crows, there's the whole thing where Maester Marwyn is leaving to go get to Daenerys, and...
Maester Luwin, you mean? Not Maester Luwin, Aemon.
No, Aemon... Okay.
Well, that's right.
Spoilers!
Well, isn't this whole thing...
Aemon is dead, and he dies during the trip, right?
Who does?
Aemon dies during the trip.
Right.
And basically, there is that whole sort of, is there some real magic thing going on? Is what's the black candles? Is he really going to learn magic? I feel like that would be kind of an interesting thing that could happen, actually.
Well, I think if there's anyone in Westeros who knows how to do magic, excepting the acolytes of the Lord of Light, of course, that we know actually can do magic, like Melisandre or Thoros or whoever, Archmaester Mormon would be the guy to talk to. He seems like someone who actually would know something about that. But I'm kind of surprised that in this episode, the first thing that you wanted to talk about was the question of whether Sam is a wizard.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's kind of a minor point in this story. We can talk about the power of literacy and reading and books and stuff like that. And I've seen some other people comment on that on this episode, and I think that's an important thing to talk about. But one thing that's not really important in this episode is wizardry. Unless you want to talk about Melisandre and her possible influence in causing one of the usurper kings to be killed, or the whole bringing back to life thing. Is it Thoros who brings back Catelyn?
Well, who else
I think. Obviously that hasn't happened yet, but I believe in the book it was Beric himself who did it.
What?
Really?
No.
Yeah.
Wait. What? Hold on. That can't be right.
No, I'm pretty sure that's right.
But Beric Dondarrion isn't a priest, though.
No, I think he does it.
Hold on. You know what? You're right. What happens is he dies.
You know what? I'm
right. When he gives his life to bring back Catelyn. That's what happens.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Because remember, Thoros was saying to Brienne, he gave the last of himself or something like that. Or he had too many rebirths or whatever.
But how many times did he die?
I don't know. But when did they?
7.
That's right, 7.
Right, exactly. So when did we find out that Beric did it, though?
When did we find out? Well,
I
I think it was later on.
I mean, the whole the Lady Stoneheart thing. That's at the very, very end of Storm of Swords, right?
Yeah, I don't remember exactly when we.
No. But then it's towards the end. But then it's towards the end of Feast for Crows as well.
Right.
Because remember, Brienne sees her, and then Catelyn's like, "Bullshit, fuck you," or something like that.
Yeah, well, she uses mime, but yes. Now, we talked about before how we think that season might end. Do you remember what you said?
Yeah, the whole thing, like looking into the fire or something like that, and like Balon Greyjoy dying. So what was it I thought before? I thought that it's also possible that what was I saying? I don't remember. So just keep going. It'll come to me.
Well, we thought that Sam killing Other would be in the last episode, and it wasn't.
Well, that's what we
right?
thought, but then we more recently said that we think it's going to be I was thinking that it probably is. That it might be something like Balon Greyjoy falling off the bridge, and then like maybe it's zooming out of Melisandre's fire or something like that.
Oh, yeah. That would be an interesting way to do it. I mean, so let's talk about the Sam thing for a second.
Yeah.
We haven't had any...
the biggest
Jeremy
thing
is really obsessed with Sam being a wizard.
Yeah, I'm fine talking about it. It's fine.
Forget the damn wizard stuff. I just thought that's interesting because I don't know if they put that in there because there's something that they know about what's going to happen to Sam the character.
So I've seen some interesting comments on the fact that this is more like a meta commentary, and that like George R. R. Martin is a wizard because he can write his characters to live or die, or that Tywin Lannister is a wizard because he can cause all the events to happen by doing writing all of these letters and sending them out, as he has been doing for several episodes now. So I think it's sort of a parallel to those issues or storylines rather than anything really having it to do directly with Sam.
Well, here's an interesting thing, actually. I was watching an interview once with George R. R. Martin, and he was basically talking about, he normally says how Tyrion is his favorite character, even though, he loves all his characters. And he said, Tyrion is actually like the most like me. And then he stopped and said, actually, Tyrion is really like who I'd like to be. He's kind of a little more clever, or at least on the spot more clever. He said, I'm actually probably more like Sam. So that's an interesting thing. That's what it made me think about.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I really hate finding out about theories about things because they're often right, or not all of them.
Well, there's been plenty of theories that have been wrong.
Right, that's true. I just,
but forget. Well, let's not even think about theories of the books or what happens. I'm just thinking about purely adaptation aspects. We have not had Sam the Slayer yet because there was no one around to witness it other than Gilly. So if we don't see anything left, what's going to happen with Sam is that how are they going to call him Sam the Slayer? If nothing else happens, then it would have to be where maybe Gilly talks about it and they say, "Oh, you killed it? Yeah, Sam the Slayer here." That's one way they could do it.
They might not actually ever call him Sam the Slayer.
That's another option, that they just don't do it, which would be a shame, because I always like that. Some people doing it kind of sarcastically, but some kind of with a little bit of mild respect.
Yeah.
Well, that was, it was a nice touch, but it's a small thing. I think I much more miss the lack of Dolorous Ed than anything else from all of those scenes up north. Dolorous Ed is hilarious.
Well, that's not really my favorite thing. But
do you think, see the wall, do you think, I guess it's kind of an aside, but do you think they're going to have Janis Slint on the wall and John beheading him?
I hope so.
Well, that's not until next season. No, wait, that's not
a while.
That's not for a long time.
It's Dance of Dragons. It was the beginning of Dance of Dragons, but it was great because I remember...
it was great. It was fantastic.
Remember he just kept saying, "You will rue the day that you..."
And then, as he starts to lift his sword, he's like, "Wait a minute, let's make a deal. Hold on, I'll go, damn it. I'll go." He basically, as he draws his sword, he's like, "Fa, I spit on you. I spit." And then he starts to, then his sword is still coming out. Fa, foo, fooey. And then he pulls out the sword. He's like, "What? a baby has a sword, little boy gonna be playing with the sword, and then he raises the sword above his head, and it's like, hey, well, hold on now, wait a second, then John lifts it up, and it's like, hey, listen, you know, let's talk for a second, let's all, guys, can we all pause, please?
Yes.
I just want to have a little powwow.
Jermaine, the whole thing is that the whole thing also remember in the books is that Janis Slint was like he didn't kill Ned, but he like held up his head. That's like the whole thing.
Well, he definitely betrayed him.
Yeah. It was that, and the Hound in the show raised his head, right? Yeah, I think it was the Hound who raised Ned's head.
So they might just be cutting him out, which is unfortunate because he was such a great character to see die.
Yeah.
I hope they will have him in, but that's a long time from now.
It is not actually a long time from now because
chronologically, you're right, because it's technically during Feast for Crows, and maybe a little bit of Storm of Swords. Probably more Feast for Crows.
Yeah. So I mean, remember, Slint gets thrown away by Tyrion to the wall because he knows you can't just kill him. And, then the stuff happens, blah, 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 I think
right, but even if chronologically it's not that long from now, I mean, we're talking about something that's going to happen not even in next season, but probably in the season after that.
Because the Siege of the Wall is going to be next season.
I have to assume it is.
Yeah.
I have to assume that the initial force of the wildlings is going to be next episode. And that's also when Ygritte will probably die.
Yeah.
I have to assume that's what's going to happen. Because, now it is a little bit different from the book in terms of that, but I just sort of was thinking of what are they going to do with Sam? Like, are they going to have in the final episode of the season them meeting up with Bran and the Reeds? Because they do meet up after all. And he's talked about it, but we haven't seen.
The problem with doing that in the last episode of this season is that then you have really nothing to say about Bran for a long time.
No,
It's okay.
that's true, but keep in mind. I mean, is he even in? I don't think he's in A Feast for Crows at all.
No, of course not. He's not in Feast for Crows.
So yeah, that's true. He's not much in it. But of course, he has essentially what I would call a pretty interesting story in Dance with Dragons. But even so,
but that's also kind of a slow story. Not a whole lot happens in it.
Bran's story is always pretty slow, and I don't mind it. But it's also fine that there are fewer chapters with him. I mean, you think they'll have Cold Hands, starting next season?
I think they don't have a choice about that. I think they have to have Cold Hands. Now the real question is he just going to show up? I don't think he's going to show up next.
You think he's going to look like Benjy?
Nah, well, no, but we don't see him, right? We never don't. We don't.
You never see his face. Like? That's right.
So we don't. They could just have any actor play that person, in the final episode. But like you said, I feel like that would be losing time. Obviously, Sam has to get back in time for what you were talking about, the siege. But that can happen later. Yeah. I think that they'll definitely be integrating stuff from season 4 into next season, because it's sort of like they've gone through, I don't know, 60% of the book or so by this point.
Yeah.
So I feel like they have to.
When do you think? So when do you think they'll appoint Jon as Lord Commander? Do you think that'll be in the 9th or 10th episode of next season?
It's an interesting. It really depends on how they're going to be arranging it.
Well, it would make sense for it to be the 10th, because remember they appointed Robb King of the North, in the 10th on the 10th episode of the first season. Mm-hmm. So, By the way, what happened to Great John Umber?
Oh, well, okay, so that's one of those things that just sort of happens.
Remember, some of the Umbers showed up. It wasn't Great John, but some of the Umbers showed up during the Red Wedding.
I actually do have an answer to that. And this is one of those, sometimes real life gets in the way, you can't avoid it, nonsense, which is essentially the actor had some issues. I'm not going to get into what it was, but let's just say there were some criminal issues that he had to deal with, and he couldn't come back. I know, right? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, typical.
Whatever the situation was, he couldn't come back, so they couldn't have him in, basically, is what happened. Which is sort of unfortunate, and they didn't recast him. Maybe just because he was so clearly perfect for that role.
Yeah, he was.
which is unfortunate because I felt the same thing about the guy who played the Mountain in the first season, that he was just great. And I remember that one scene with him and the Hound.
Jeremy, you know what they're gonna bring in next? They're gonna bring in Nathan Jones for both the Hound and Great John Ump.
No, that would be terrible. That would just be terrible.
Because he was arrested for armed robbery. All right, no one knows what we're talking about. So
I don't even know what you're talking about.
He was he was this wrestler. This Australian wrestler, you know how like the WWF or WWE would do all these like detailed promos for people, like for new wrestlers, like
sure.
Who's this new person? So they had a big, like a really good like setup for this guy Nathan Jones to come in, who was like they were saying he was out of prison, he had time to sit and think and wait. He was like arrested for armed robbery, which was really true. But he came in and all he could do was just this roundhouse kick, and he was the worst wrestler. He was terrible. It was just a roundhouse kick. That's all he did. He was worse than Hulk Hogan. Like, it was pretty bad.
Right. Now, the only problem is that Nathan Jones is technically like 6'11", so unfortunately, you're probably right.
Yeah, he would perfect. He'd roundhouse kick with a two-handed kick.
What a great...
I remember when WCW made this big promo for this guy named Berlin, who was supposed to be this like, he only spoke in German. He needed a translator to speak for him. And like they built it up, and he would appear. He wouldn't actually wrestle. He would just like appear, and he would like talk in German at people and stuff. And then his translator would translate for him. And then like it turned out that he sucked. He was just like this stupid, like it made no sense.
Okay.
He was just awful. Also, I think his translator like forgot her lines at some point, which was kind of amusing because she wasn't actually a translator. She just had like memorized lines and she forgot them live on TV.
Well, that makes sense. But getting back to Game of Thrones for a second.
Yeah.
So, the truth is the Oberyn versus Mountain fight has to be done well, and it's not so simple because you need to have some athleticism in some parts of it. Certainly Oberyn has to be done well, and there's some things you can do to cheat, to hide, and if someone's just decently athletic, you can do a lot of stuff. Like we saw with this episode, for example. But I'll get to that in just a second. But think about it this way. You need to make sure that the Mountain looks, in comparison to Oberyn, like, big. He has to look huge. He has to be convincing that he can crush his skull. It's really important. We want to see that. I mean,
right.
That's sort of one of the... among the things I've had issues with in the adaptation, the biggest one is that we just don't care about the Mountain as much.
Right, like, well, we kind of hear about him.
We talked about that before, about how it's just like not, he doesn't have the same presence. Impact on the story.
Even though he's not in all the books, you see he's like this monster roaming around Westeros. That's kind of what he is.
Right.
And everyone has his view, and he really is a monster. Like he's cruel, he's huge, and anytime you run into him, it's always like, oh, fuck. Like how'd you run into this guy?
It's never gonna end well.
And it never ends well whenever someone meets up with him.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I mean, we'll see, I suppose, what happens.
But you're right.
How they're going to do it.
Well, you don't get a sense of him being huge. That's the thing. You get the sense that he did all these things in the Riverlands, and that he was like he's kind of Tywin's lackey, but it's not,
Yeah, but another problem is that like with all the goat stuff and everything, they were just terrible people, partially because the Mountain liked horrible people around him.
Are you talking about the Brave Companions?
Yeah. So. Because we don't really get that connection either, it's another, we're not really finding out, we're not really being informed on Mountain stuff, I guess.
But weren't the Brave Companions the guys who chopped off Jaime's hand?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, you're right, that's right, they were the Mountains men. Yeah, they were just like, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's kind of a shame.
Who are the Bloody Mummers?
They're the same guys.
That's what people call them, not to their faces.
Okay.
It's one of those kinds of things. Like,
why were they called mummers? What was the whole thing? Like,
what does a mummer mean?
Because they're a freak show. I mean, a mummer is just an actor.
Right.
Oh,
but yeah, they people call them that because they're a freak show.
Right. Well, that's true. The Fat Dothraki. That would have been fun to see. That could have been how they could have brought back Jason Momoa. Have him be a Fat Dothraki. I guess they just didn't want him. they didn't want to either give him a fat suit or have him gain weight. But that would have been pretty funny. You have to admit, if they had brought back Jason Momoa in a fat suit to play the Fat Dothraki.
By the way,
plays Zolo the Fat. Isn't that his name?
Is it the Fat?
I
don't know if that's really his name.
I think that's what. Because remember when later on when Jamie becomes the Lord Commander, and he's like reading the book of the King's Guard, their official chronicle or whatever, and he like writes a little bit in his own entry, and he says something about his hand being chopped off, and I think the name of the guy that he said chopped off his hand was Zalo the Fat. At least I hope that's what his name is, because it's pretty.
Reminds me. Remember, Jeremy, we were talking about that possibly if they have strong belt loss, The Rock would be a great decision. But like, I was just thinking, and I was thinking too, like, maybe they'll have Barristan do that scene instead. But here's the thing: they haven't showed Barristan really fighting, and you think they're going to be able to do that? Because realistically,
they've done it a little bit, but I feel like I was saying, you can do some interesting cheats with this stuff. I think they'll be able to. But let me just read you a little bit of a description from the Wiki of Ice and Fire about Zolo. Zolo, better known as Zolo the Fat, was a Dothraki member of the Brave Companions. He is fat. I'm glad that they were so descriptive.
Nice. Okay, we should probably get back at that. Should we talk about the Red Wedding, perhaps, maybe?
Well, let's hold off on that a little bit, because I want to get into some of the other parts of the episode. Because, So, talked a little bit for a second about the Bran stuff, and how finally they split off Rickon, and I actually liked the little interplay between them, because
that was
with you in the book, Rickon is like a non-entity. He's a
right.
feral child that barely speaks. Like,
he's really what he really is. He's really what he is. He serves a function for Bran. He's kind of an extension. Not that he's like Bran. He's kind of an extension of Bran. He's in Bran's world, and that's all that it really is. Yeah. It kind of like softens or annoys Bran. He's just like a little younger thing, but he's not like Also, because remember in the books, everyone's much younger. So
true.
Rickon was 3. In that part, he's 6 in the
right. Quite a difference, really. Even there's still 6 is still ridiculously young, but 3.
I agree. I really like that scene. I liked it a lot. Although I mean, it's not really a complaint with this episode, but actually the way they've treated Rick in earlier episodes, because he kind of vanishes a lot of the time. We see Bran a lot, and we see the Brans with Hodor and Osha.
In the book, show.
No, in the show. And we see all of these people together, and then the Reeds came along, and so we see them, Jojen and Mira, and they're hanging out. And Rickon is almost never there. So
that's kind of like the books. I mean,
it's not like the books, really. I mean, we know that Rickon is there in the books because it says he's there. It mentions him frequently. But on the show, it's like I feel like it's easy to forget that he's even with them. Until this episode, when all of a sudden they're like, "Goodbye, Rickon, we're gonna miss you," and I, my sense of it is that I didn't watch this episode with non-book readers, but my sense of it is that a lot of people who watched the show that didn't read the books were kind of surprised because they forgot that Rickon was even there in the first place.
Yeah, but in fairness, I feel like a lot of book readers also have.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when we found out, he's in the Skagos, the island of cannibals, where there are unicorns.
That's right. The island of Skagos.
I don't know what. I guess maybe we'll see some stuff when Davos.
Where there are cannibals and unicorns.
Yeah, right. I mean,
the unicorns are cannibals.
I would have to imagine if we do see unicorn, it's going to be horrible. Horrible.
They're supposed to be ugly.
Yeah, right. See, that's more interesting.
The unicorns of Skagos they're not like pretty rainbow unicorns.
Right. Like if they're just like a mutation. or something, but they're basically just a horse with a horn, kind of like a rhino, except
they probably look like rhinos, actually.
Yeah, I could buy that. I could buy that. Yeah, so I was glad that they did the Hodor insertion, if you will, where he got inside him. I also like that. He was finally going around going Hodor. Although I did miss
that happened in the book. He didn't go inside Hodor until Dance of Dragons, right?
No, he did go there. They just don't really know about it.
They don't really
Oh
want
yeah,
it.
it was a
keeps it
secret.
Yeah.
And I feel like he knew that it was like a really like creepy thing to do in the book, and so he tried to hide it from people because he thought it would freak them out.
Right.
In the show, the any kind of moral questions are just brushed aside. It's just like,
That's a very good point.
no one can do that except for you, and that makes you awesome.
Right.
And
Now,
not like creepy and scary at all.
Right. Now, I believe it actually is true that does make Bran special, but the part of the problem, of course, with a lot of this stuff is that who's he going to talk to? If he can't keep it a secret, if he's not keeping it a secret, that's a classic issue with a lot of this adaptation stuff, is that you can't really reveal what's in people's heads when they don't want to tell who's the people around them, or it doesn't make sense. So we lose a lot of that kind of subtlety.
That's true. Although they could have showed Bran like secretly taking over Hodor without anyone else knowing about it if they wanted to.
It was very streamlined, so I don't know how much time they really had for it.
Did Jojen say all that stuff to Bran about who he was in the books?
At times, he was a lot more incremental. He was a lot more obtuse as well.
Yeah. Okay, we should move on to the next thing.
Okay, so there was that part, and it's right connected to the Jon Ygritte thing.
Right.
And the question is, do you think that the way they handled it was decent? Because, in the book it's a little bit different.
How's it different again?
Well, Ygritte kills the guy with cuts his throat.
Uh-huh.
And when Jon runs away, he gets the feeling that one of the arrows being shot at him is coming from her.
Yeah.
So I feel like in the show they've changed a little bit Jon and Ygritte's relationship. I mean, maybe I'm remembering this wrong, but I feel like in the book she believed that he had completely gone over to the wildlings. Mm-hmm. And she was loyal to the wildlings, and she thought he was loyal to the wildlings. On the show, they make it clear that like she kind of knows that his loyalties are not with the wildlings, and that he still kind of feels faithful to the Night's Watch, but she thinks that he's faithful to her, and that she's faithful to him, and they have their own like unique special relationship which supersedes any of those other loyalties. Mm-hmm. So it kind of made it a little more poignant when he left, because instead of in the books it's like oh well, you're not really a wildling, really you're just a Night's Watchman. In the show it was more like, you don't actually care about me and our relationship as much as you care about being with the Night's Watch.
Right.
And I think that was, it might even have been better that way.
Yeah. The only thing I was thinking is just like, I think it was kind of dumb, like how Tormund Giantsbane was like not really mad at Ygritte. It was like, it wasn't even like, I don't think he wasn't mad at her, but like his response was like, I feel like it was way more subdued towards Ygritte than it really realistically would have been. Like maybe he wouldn't have killed Ygritte for trying to like help him or whatever, help Jon, but still, like, I don't know if Tormund Giantsbane would be really take that sort of shit. You know what I mean?
Interesting point.
I think that Tormund, obviously likes Ygritte a lot, and even likes Jon a lot.
Yeah.
This isn't.
Well, then later on,
it was so different in the book, because in the book it's not Tormund Giantsbane, it's the Magnar of the Thames,
that's right.
Who from the beginning hates Jon, doesn't trust him, is like just looking for an excuse to kill him, right? And doesn't particularly like Ygritte either. Yeah. So there's a very different dynamic from Tormund, who's a little bit more brutal in the show than he was in the book, a little bit scarier, right? In the book he's kind of mainly comic relief, but still not a guy who is in the habit of going around like killing people that he's fond of.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I think the Magnar, as I recall, is someone who's going to be cast for next season.
Yes, and we're all excited for that.
Why does the Magnar? Wait. Oh, you mean for the battle?
I guess so. Yeah.
Obviously,
It must be.
we're going to get a lot more. We're going to see more of the wildlings, even though John's not going to be with them. I mean, we haven't really. Remember, we didn't even meet Val or Dala or see the baby, right? Any of that.
Yeah,
true.
and we barely saw Mance. I mean, really. Like,
Although that was good casting. What we need to see.
You liked the casting for Mance?
Yeah.
I
so
didn't
far,
like
there are
it so
two.
much.
There are two people from Rome in the show. There's and the person who plays Edmure played Augustus or something in the Rome.
So what was your problem with the casting?
With Mance? I thought he was a little bit too old, a little bit too grizzled. You know, Mance is supposed to be like. I thought Mance was younger than that, and I thought he was also supposed to be like more charismatic and charming. You know, like he's a singer, isn't he? A singer? Doesn't he play an instrument?
Yes, he does.
And speaking of which, speaking of HBO incest, as they they like to do things, which I'm fine with. McNulty was supposed to be Dominic West. He was supposed to be Mance Rayder, and he turned it down. And that would have been great. He would have been so.
They wanted him. They wanted to get Dominic West, and Dominic West would have been really much better, I think, than.
And the only guy who would have been better as Mance Rayder than McNulty would have been Bunk. He would have been great as Mance Rayder.
Well, I mean, I know you're saying that he's supposed to be younger, but he's like totally gray, at least mostly. You know, so it's not. I mean, he's supposed to be middle aged.
He's supposed to be middle aged, but this guy is like kind of the older side of middle age. I mean, that guy played Caesar in Rome in the show Rome, and he was middle aged then. He is a really good actor. It's just that McNulty would have been so great.
I remember Mance being he's supposed to be more charming. He's kind of a ladies' man, you know, a little bit more flamboyant than this guy. I mean, remember the reason he left the Night's Watch was because he had this cloak that had like, red cloth sewn into it. And they said, oh, you can't wear red. You're in the Night's Watch. You have to wear black. And he was like, fuck that. I'm leaving. Right? That's basically what happened.
You think that's really the reason? Like,
no.
I mean, the man's pretty smart. So it seems like
it's also hard to believe that he really could have taken that vow of chastity seriously. You know, it's really not Mance's style.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like maybe that was a straw that broke the camel's back, you know. And like, and also remember, even Lord Commander Mormont, like was saying, like, you know, like he knows, like they go out and they like go and like some of them go and meet like whores and whatever. Like he doesn't like
in Mole Town.
Yeah.
Do we know anything about Mance from before he was in the Night's Watch?
Before?
Yeah.
I don't think
he's actually the person who Ned Stark copulated with. That's what it is.
No, we do know. No,
he's Jon Snow's father? I mean, mother?
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know what I mean.
No, wait, we do actually know. We do know something. We know he was a wildling that was raised by the Night's Watch.
Oh.
And then he was ranging. He was healed by a wildling woman, and she mended his torn cloak with swatches of red fabric. That's why. That's where the color thing came from.
Yeah.
Because they said it had to wear black, and he said, "You know what? The hell with this," because she saved his life. And so he was always. The thing is, he was already kind of a wildling because that's where he came from.
Right.
So I guess that in that sense it makes sense that he has that connection, I suppose. Right. However. That being said,
it's also supposed to be right. Remember when Jon Snow first meets him, and he doesn't know who Mance is, and he just assumes that. He assumes that the Magnar is the king of the wildlings, and Mance is supposed to be like this guy playing a lute who looks like he's just a minstrel or something, right?
True, but that's he's good at that kind of thing.
Right, but the guy they cast to play Mance doesn't ever give that impression of being like, oh, you could just mistake me for a minstrel.
He's more shrewd. That's kind of like he seems like cold and shrewd. Which is fine. But you're right. He doesn't really seem like a wildling. That's what more I have an issue with. He doesn't. Which maybe I guess is the point. But I don't know.
Yes, I suppose so.
All
right. Well, let's. let's move
Should we
on.
talk about Daenerys next,
Yeah.
just to get that out of the way?
Yeah, let's do
I
that.
think, what's it called? Not worm tongue.
Grey Worm.
Grey Worm. He was clearly the best with the fight. He was awesome.
He was
Spinning
great.
his.
And it's not easy to make a spear fight look good.
No, yeah, it was believable. Like, he was really good with it. Like, he was just,
Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I liked it because they all had their different styles.
Yeah.
Jorah is sort of like a very talented Westerosi thing who's like picked up stuff from other places. And Darya's kind of like the head of the gold people. And obviously the Unsullied are trained in their crazy style.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the Unsullied, though. Like, I would assume most of their training involves fighting in formation, not
Right.
like fighting individually, one-on-one.
Yeah, but he's-
Oh, no, it's not just that. Don't you remember? There's like whole parts where they have to fight each other and kill each other.
That's right.
I mean, I know they have to kill lots of people, but I thought that was just like to harden them.
Yeah, but they also have to fight each other so that the best of them go forward. Remember, they fight each other to the death
Do they?
during their training, yeah.
In like gladiatorial kind of battles?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't
I remember
imagine that it was much in the way of a real arena thing, but yeah. It wasn't really mentioned that much in the show, but it's definitely in the book.
Okay. Yeah, I just didn't remember that part. But yeah, that was cool. And it was a way to spruce up, I guess, this the whole Yunkai bit with a little bit more action, because if I remember, in the books, Yunkai basically surrenders without a fight, or they come to some kind of agreement. There's some compromise,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, right. So, I mean, we were talking about the whole, Misa thing, which is the name of episode 10,
Right.
and how that's got to be something. It has to mean something.
Well, I mean, what
Yeah,
it means, I think, is like,
Isn't that?
yeah, what it means is like Dany has now freed all the slaves of Yunkai, and like now they're hers, like they're her people,
Yeah,
because
it's like,
they can't stay in Yunkai.
Right,
So
200,000.
The other thing, guys, I was thinking about. This is my other possible theory. It is possible the season will end with Catelyn being brought back to life. It is too soon in terms of the books, but it may, for the show, they may do that.
Well, that may be so. I mean, I guess they could just run across her. I mean, but Beric would have to kill himself essentially, or however he does it. They bring her back.
Right. Right. And that's the thing, because Arya, that would be really diverging from the book if Arya like saw it happen, or whatever. She saw Beric, turning back.
There's no way that Arya wouldn't go to her mother if she saw her.
No, I'm saying him seeing her, her seeing the resurrection occur.
She would still go to her mother.
all right. That brings up an interesting question, which is, in what way would you most want to see the show deviate from the books?
Okay, well, the problem is that it's hard to really get a good idea. I haven't done, myself, an analysis of exactly how the timelines add up. I know some other people have, because, A Feast for Crows and Dance of Dragons, Storm and Swords have intersecting timelines in a lot of ways. And I think there's some things you can compress pretty well.
Okay, but I'm saying don't overcomplicate it. Just what's something from the books that you want to see changed for the show? You want to see it differently?
Changed.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't know.
I'm not sure if I have anything that I would want to be changed. I mean, there wasn't anything particularly that I thought, ugh, this sucks. I hope they change it in the show.
Oh, well, are you speaking generally, Sam, or are you speaking right now, what's happening right now in the plot?
Generally. Anything in the future.
I hope that, the Dornish prince the young Dornish prince who comes to woo, Daenerys. I don't think we really need that.
Oh, you mean
It was
later
kind of
on? Yeah. I agree with that. I like here's what I would, if they're going to do anything with that in the show, here's how I'd want to see it. I'd want to see a little initial thing with Quentin, which is, by the way, a great pussy name.
It is.
And and I think it's totally intentional that he's like, Quentin, what are you doing over there? Stop eating up all the chicken. So Quentin, I'd like to see like they'd have to get like a really good casting of like a bright-eyed, idealistic. I'm gonna do it, Father. I'm gonna go get Daenerys. Hooray! Like, yeah, sure you will, honey. So, and then like we don't see him for a while, and then we see him basically letting the dragons go and getting killed. That's what I want to see. Because
And
that's
nothing in between?
that's what we should have seen in the book.
Yeah.
That's not exactly what you call character development.
No, but that character didn't have good development. So it doesn't matter. No, but you see what I'm saying? This is part of one of those things that can be portrayed better in the visual way, because you could have an actor with that kind of appeal. If you like I'm saying, you have to be careful about the casting.
Without having to be inside his lame mind.
Yeah, exactly. I want to have people like, who is this guy? But then he's gone, and people sort of forget, and then suddenly he comes back, and it's like, it's like, hey, it's that guy. What the? Oh, this is gonna be big, guys. It's gonna be big, and then he's dead. You know what? That's what I want to see if we're talking about changes.
Yeah.
I mean, it really sort of depends, because, I mean, once you get to that point, who knows which season that will be, and whether or not even Winds of Winter is going to have more chapters, or whether it's going to be released.
All right, well, here's the real question that we really got to think about, the real issue, which is the show going to catch up with the books and go beyond it, which is not going to be cool. I'm not going to be happy with that.
No, I wouldn't be either. And
I don't think a lot of people would be happy with that. But it's very possible, because, I mean, also, it may even catch up with Winds of Winter.
Well, so here's the thing. On the one hand, if this show is really popular and making lots of money, they're going to want to continue it, even if they run out of book material to talk about.
Yeah, well, that's true.
I think it's reasonable to assume that Winds of Winter at least will be released before they get to that point on the show. But then,
maybe,
the last book.
You understand, I'm the longest time. I've been a George R. R. Martin fan the longest out of anyone here, and I'm telling you, you can't make any predictions.
Okay.
That's fair. I would like to think that, but listen.
Anyway, what I was saying was, so I would, if it's making money, they're going to want to keep going. But on the other hand, how many HBO shows have even gone for more than 6 seasons?
Let's see,
or even
Sopranos.
like 5 seasons? I mean, I think, did the Sopranos go for 6 seasons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They split up one of the seasons, but still, it's 6.
And
there was like a real.
That's a long time.
Curb Your Enthusiasm.
HBO just doesn't have shows that last that long.
Right. Well, that's true.
So they might want to even end the show early.
Well, they said 7 recently, but truth is, their ratings are really quite good right now. Like better. I think they won their time. So
I don't know how many years has True Blood been on.
That's a pretty popular show too, but I don't know.
I feel like that's been on for a number of years.
True Blood? It does seem that way, doesn't it? Well, with all the supposed nudity and bloods and such. At least I think that's what's in it.
Yeah, I wasn't too impressed with the show when I saw it. I mean, I'm sure it's all right. But
well, I mean, I know it's based on a book series.
No, it wasn't like, I don't think HBO really makes really shitty things, but it was. Anyway, I think. I mean, we don't know, but what does that mean? What will that mean if they end it at a certain point? And the series isn't done. The book series isn't done. What does that mean?
They could really hope the story. They could kind of leave the story unfinished, or they could just make up their own ending and just sort of end it a little bit arbitrarily.
Do you think they would pause it and wait?
I mean, obviously they know how it's all going to end. But do they know any interim step? I don't think so, considering I don't think good old George of Martin knows either.
Well, I mean, but there have been HBO shows that have had sort of gaps between seasons, right? The Sopranos.
I mean, Sopranos, Curb Your Enthusiasm, even The Wire, I think, also. I don't really know how much.
But when you're talking, I don't know that they would have like a 3-year gap or something if they were waiting for a book, to be published or something like that. That seems kind of excessive.
Maybe they had that show that George R. R. Martin is writing for them.
So I guess we should talk about the big one here, the Red Wedding. And,
Finally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know that when we were talking earlier offline, Benji, you were saying how the wedding in the book is pretty long. It's like 100 pages. You get to go see Arya as she's getting closer.
Wait,
Actually,
I didn't say it was too long.
You said no. It was pretty long. It had like 100 pages. That we kept getting Arya as she was getting closer, which we actually did a little bit in the show too. But I feel like in general, to me, it's hard to say. Let me ask both of you because I don't really know. When you read this in the book, did you feel like it had like a real emotional reaction?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely.
It was heart wrenching. I mean, it like, and that's part of the thing because like I'm never like. That's why I kind of accept this. Yeah, I really liked how they did it. I felt they kind of did the best with what they could do. But that's why I felt like it's hard for me to really react to in the same way because it's really one of those first time things. Like if you already know about it ahead of time or anything like that, it does not have the same effect. Because I didn't know, like you could sort of guess at it, but you didn't know like the way it was going to happen. I mean, it was done in such a sort of horrific and heart wrenching way. It wasn't just that because even if they had a scene or even they had something where Rob was killed by the phrase, you'd be sad. But just the whole scene, like, I mean, George R. R. Martin said he wrote it last. Like, it was so hard to do. So anyway, I did. I don't know about you, Sam.
Yeah, no, it definitely had a big emotional impact for me reading it in the book. I mean, it's horrible, it's depressing, it's just awful. And he's very evocative and just describing all of these people getting killed, and like they're just getting shot with arrows or crossbows or whatever, and then they get up and then they're shot some more, and
it's a massacre.
It's just horrible. Watching it on the show, already knowing what was going to happen, was obviously a very different experience. For one thing, the whole thing is smaller on the show, but also,
right, by necessity.
I knew what to expect, and it didn't have the same impact for me that, like for instance, watching Ned Stark get killed in season 1.
Yeah.
That, even though I knew exactly what was going to happen, it was still so intense and so shocking and so impactful. And the only thing that was really shocking and intense, I thought, for me as somebody who already knows what's going to happen about the Red Wedding, was just the start of it when this guy walks up to Lisa, who's not in the books. He just walks up to her and just starts stabbing her, specifically in her uterus, which obviously because they must have gotten word that she was pregnant. It's a very evocative and symbolic sort of act.
Yes.
But also very brutal. One of the most brutal things I think that they've shown on the show.
Right.
But when beyond that point, it was just I mean, I knew it was going to happen, and it didn't really hit me the same way.
Of course.
That for example, Ned's execution, where you have that sudden turn where Joffrey says, "Oh, Sansa, and my mother have begged me, to be merciful, but they have the hearts of women," and cut off his head.
I think
and that's just like such a even knowing it was going to happen, it still like caught me by surprise almost. And this didn't it didn't really cut beyond just like watching Talisa get stabbed in the gut repeatedly. Nothing really caught me by surprise. They went and they shot Grey Wind, and like. I know that a lot of people feel more strongly about animals getting killed than people, but for me, it was just like, they're going to shoot him. I know they're going to shoot him. Like,
also in the show, they have not done such a great job of connecting us with the direwolves. I know because of issues, but
necessity because of the budgets. It's expensive.
But the thing is I think you're right, Sam. You're right that I think that Ned's death was a little more powerful. I think part of it, I think it perhaps is because of a couple things. I think what was really powerful about the whole Ned thing was the way they filmed it. Is you showed both Sansa and Arya reacting. The whole thing with Yoren like sort of like making like Arya like look at like do not look, that whole thing, and then I think really what carried the scene in the Red Wedding, I think really what carried all that stuff and the emotional weight of it was just the fact that Filch and Michelle Fairley are exquisite actors. Sorry, Walder Frey.
Yes.
Walder, I know, I just wanted to say it. But Walder Frey, that guy's a great actor, and so is Michelle Fairley as Catelyn, and they're just really good, really, really good. So I think they could carry some of that emotional stuff. But I think that's right. And what you're missing from in the show, which I talked about many times before, and it's hard to get, is you don't get, the thing in the book is that Catelyn's like talking about it, and she's worried about it, and she's worried about it, and then you see Arya almost getting to her, and then the whole thing that was really heart-wrenching for me when I was reading the book is like Catelyn starts talking about, she's like started like crying out to Ned in her head. Remember that whole thing? Where she's like, Ned, they killed all our babies, like all our sweet babies, like that whole thing.
Yeah,
like they've killed, and because she thinks that all her kids are dead, pretty much. And then the whole thing where she like gets, the Frey, the one who's like the simpleton. I think it's fine that they switched, that she killed the wife. I think that was a fine, that was an alright choice.
Yeah, that was fine.
But like, it's like she like sawed his neck to bone, and and they say like, and they stuck a sword through his heart.
That's right. In the book, it's so much more visceral because she talks about like sawing through his throat to the bone, and just like she's like just still sawing away at it. Like it is like there's no other word.
It shows her manic state. That's the whole thing.
Right.
She gets this manic state. And remember, she was trying to get to Walder Frey at first. She was trying to kill him. That was the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Remember?
Right. Well, she did hear a little bit too, but obviously couldn't get close enough.
Yeah, but like, and that's the whole thing. And then like, they did sort of show it in the show. How like after she killed the wife, that she sort of like her face went blank, and I think that was fine. I think that sort of shows her manic state or whatever.
Well, it's not manic.
Or no, her face, like it was just a loss.
Manic. It was just her grief.
Right. She was in shock.
They conveyed her grief.
Yeah.
Jeremy, what did you think?
Which part?
The Red Wedding. What are your thoughts? What's your reaction to it?
So overall, I thought it was very well done.
Yeah.
I thought in particular that I thought Michelle Fairley was very good in general, and David Bradley, who played Filch, Walder Filch Frey.
I mean, he was hilarious. He was really funny through the episode.
He's great, and it's clear how much he enjoys doing that character and how perfect he is.
Yeah, he's great as Walder Frey.
Yeah.
He is one of the great things about an actor is like when you're watching an actor, you're watching somebody on a TV show, and you don't even like on an outlandish TV show like Game of Thrones. It's not just your basic TV show. You've got these like weird characters, but like you're watching somebody, and like you don't think for a second that you're watching an actor or performance. You're just watching a person, right? Because he just embodies that person to the degree that it's like he is that person. And we talk a lot about one of Benjy's and Jeremy's, both of you guys, one of your favorite actors is Daniel Day-Lewis, and how he's this great method actor who just immerses himself in roles. There's a lot of actors on Game of Thrones, not necessarily method actors, but they're character actors who get deeply into their characters. And I think he's one of them. Like, you just look at him and he is Walder Frey. He doesn't look like an actor. He looks like this creepy old, medieval lord.
Oh, yeah.
That's who he is.
Like that whole thing.
You're talking a little bit about naturalistic performances.
Right. And the other thing that's interesting, this is, I guess, a side point about it, also about the Red Wedding, is in the back of your mind, to some degree, like, Walder Frey does have a little bit of a point. It's just that we are sympathetic towards the Starks, and that he like tricks them. And he is like a lecherous guy, but he did like he has a little bit of a point.
Well, no, he has a point that, Rob screwed him over. But on the other hand, he's kind of breaking this really old custom
Right. No, that's the whole thing, and it's brutal and all that.
Yeah. Oh, can we talk about that?
Yeah,
Because
let's
that's
do it.
something that really the show didn't really explain at all. The
No,
whole
they just
concept
did
of the guest's right and the the symbolic significance of eating bread and salt in somebody's home and and the protection that implies. The show didn't explain any of that. They demonstrated it. They had a ceremony where they ate bread and salt, and okay, that seems nice, but like they never said anything about what it means to to offer your hospitality to somebody and then to violate it, and what a horrible crime that Walter Fry is committing, not just by murdering people, but a crime against honor, a crime against his own honor by murdering them in his home after he specifically made this pact with them. It's not, none of that is in the show, which is disappointing because, so what he did was villainous, but I think people don't understand quite how villainous it was, how shocking the concept of the Red Wedding was. And in the books, Catelyn even makes a big point of saying, before the whole thing happens, before the wedding, before Robb goes in there, she says, make sure that you eat bread and salt. If you eat bread and salt, then we'll know that we're safe. None of that was in the show, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, because they could have said they could have said something like that. It's also interesting juxtaposition because the whole thing with the Dothraki wedding is they're supposed to be death and fighting. That's the thing.
Yeah, a bit different, but yes.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, once again, it's like you only have so much time, and also in the show to really explore all that. I mean, what you get across, I think, in the show is just holy shit, this just happened, and he tricked them and all that. I think that's part of it. And did you notice they changed the line? First of all, was it Roose Bolton who killed Robb in the books? I asked Jeremy, but Sam, do you remember?
Yes.
And then the other thing, the line
is slightly different.
Yeah.
It is different.
He said Jaime Lannister sends his regards. And in fact, I thought they were going to do that because, remember, Jaime Lannister did say, even in the show to Roose Bolton, send my regards.
Yeah, he does.
Right.
But he obviously didn't mean it that way because he knew nothing about the Red Wedding. He was in jail when all this was being planned. So it's interesting. It's interesting that this show, that they changed it. I think they're trying to distance Jaime from this whole thing. And like saying Jaime Lannister sends his regards, it almost sounds like he's just another of those Lannisters and he's just as complicit. And he's really not complicit.
Yeah, you know what? Even in the book, when he said Jaime Lannister sent his regards, I actually was like, what? Like, I was like, what are you talking about? What does this have to do with Jaime Lannister? So. But
in the book, it was just sort of like a dark joke, like, that nobody got except for Roose Bolton.
Right, and if they did that in the show, people would assume it meant something.
Also, Roose is a different character in the book. I mean, he's got that like pale face and he's soft spoken. I don't have such an issue.
He's pretty soft spoken in the show.
Yeah, but no, you get the sense of kind of creepy, like really soft. I don't know. Like I think remember he's got that smooth face. Like he's just like a freaky dude. But
basically, Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah. I think that I still thought it was well done. I mean, I think also part of the shock of it, just in general, is also, and I remember thinking this in the books, is that the phrase seemed kind of minor, but they're the ones who wipe. Now, even though they collude with the Lannisters, it's like they're the ones who wipe out the Starks. And it's kind of crazy. It's like this side, because they're not necessarily a powerful house necessarily. I don't think they're a weak house. But and part of the whole thing, I think what's like underneath the whole thing is Walder and probably the whole house sort of feels like they're always like spat on and shat on by other houses. They got ugly women, and that's their whole thing.
New.
Yeah. Well, the Frys would like to think of themselves as being the equivalent of one of the great houses, and nobody treats them that way. Like you said, everyone sort of looks down on them as being like very much a secondary sort of noble house. And and so there is that resentment. I mean, it's even, they just sort of hinted at it on the show, like when when Catelyn says, oh, he wanted his daughter to marry a king, and Robb says this, his daughter is marrying the best match in the history of his house.
Right.
Like he should appreciate that, and like it just sort of shows a little bit like the attitude that the higher ranking nobles have for the Frys, and also that that the Frys are somewhat legitimately feel like they're sort of being dumped on.
Thank you, Benjy. Thank you for that. Oh, that was also driving me crazy. I'm sorry,
Sam, let's get your pronunciation correct, please.
Okay.
Oh.
Do I? I mean, I always say the Frys, right?
Pedantry.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's clearly Frey. So.
No, it is Frey.
It is Frey, I suppose. I don't know. I have a problem, which is that when I read the book, I start pronouncing the characters, all the characters a certain way in my head, and then
Of course. Well, let me tell you some things.
Yeah, I pronounce it differently.
I thought Tyrion for a long time, but here's really the worst part.
Sure.
I actually thought it was Grevjoy for the longest time.
Oh!
Somewhere in my mind, I cut out the bottom part of the Y and thought it was a V. It just started, I think it was just when I started reading, because I wasn't, actually, I know real excuse me. Yeah, it is.
I mean,
I've had a few characters' names that I've pronounced, not just like, it's not just sort of a variation of accents or whatever, but wrong. Like, for example, Sir Alistair Thorne. I always thought that his name was Alistair. I just thought there was a T in it.
Right.
Just assumed there was a T.
Kind of
it was Alistair, but it's not. It's Alistair.
There's like a Sir Jeremy with an A, and you wonder, is it just my name?
Right.
All right, so let's wrap things up a little bit here.
Yeah.
And just talk about our overall thoughts of this episode. I feel like we really shouldn't talk about the season as a whole until we see the ending, because that's going to inform a lot of what will happen. So let's hold off on our season grades, if you will. Let's just talk about what we think of the episode. My feeling is it's a pretty strong episode.
Yeah.
A very strong ending.
Yeah.
And was it perfect? Probably not. But I really liked it. One of the better ones of the series. You guys?
Yeah.
I agree. I think it was a very strong episode. It pretty much, solidifies this season as being, I mean, we're not to talk about the whole season necessarily, but, in general, I like the third season better than the second. But in terms of this episode, I thought that it was a very strong episode. I thought it was probably the best episode of this season. The only one that I would possibly say might be better than this one is the one where Jaime gets his hand cut off.
That is a good one.
It has a lot of other good stuff in it too, besides Jaime getting his hand cut off. But between this one and that one would be the best of this season. And I think that the way they executed the Red Wedding was very strong. They did it well. Like you said, it may not have been perfect, but it was done effectively. And I think that, they got the reaction they were looking for from the audience.
No, definitely. So many people cursing out HBO online. I know this is HBO, I know they're from books, but you didn't have to put that in there. Well.
Oh, God. in the words of our Father, spare me.
Yeah, well, if you.
Yeah, well, it's the same thing, the people who are saying, "Oh, I'm not going to watch the show anymore. I give up."
Yeah, well, we'll see about that.
Because remember, we heard the same thing back in season 1 when Ned got killed. People were like, "Oh, I'm not watching this show anymore," and then they kept watching it.
Well, yeah, it's funny because remember we were talking to John, who we watched it with Ben, who hasn't read any of the books. And he didn't really know what was going to happen at all. So he was kind of shocked. And I've been very good about not telling him things. In fact, I kind of made him think that Robb was not going to die. So he was really shocked.
Yeah.
But, one of the things he said before we ever started watching is he's like, somebody told me that everybody dies.
Yeah.
Good Lord. But I don't know who's trying to be an asshole to you, or if they just don't, or if they just heard that kind of thing from someone else.
Yeah, that's the mark of someone who hasn't actually really read the books, or doesn't really actually pay attention to the books while they're reading it.
Right. Well, we talked about this before about how most of the Starks are still alive. John Cough is also probably still alive.
Here's the thing. Yeah, most people are not. And here's the other part of the books is that a lot of peripheral characters do die. It's not as in
true, but
So
Tyrion's still alive. Cersei's still alive. Jaime's still alive. Daenerys is still alive. Bran's still alive. Sansa's still alive. Arya's still alive.
it's Tywin, Lysa.
Lysa. Oh, Littlefinger's still alive too.
Yeah, Tywin, Lysa. Who else? Who else died? Oberyn Martell.
True.
John Arryn died.
The Mountain
And
Death.
Joffrey, of course.
Joffrey is a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I obviously I'd reiterate what you guys said. I
And
thought the
little Robert Aaron, he's still alive,
yeah,
right? For now.
Oh, sweet Robin.
We'll see how long he lives.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so
I think
so
he's
I,
done long to this world.
so I wanted to cap out like when you're asking me like obviously I agree with all you guys. I think you're definitely one of the best episodes of the series. Every part was strong, could have been better. Blah blah blah. That's kind of the whole thing in general. I mean, the show I think still will never be as good as the books. I really do think that, but I mean, I enjoy the show, and we also expect we'd be really surprised if it was better than the books. Anyway, what I'll say is I wanted to leave with like a little anecdote, maybe a question that we could really briefly talk about. It was interesting seeing all these responses, and I had a little snafu, and Jeremy, you saw this happen, where I saw online like a couple minutes after or like at least 5 or 10 minutes after the episode was done, I saw that people were posting like, "Oh, what the fuck just happened on Game of Thrones?" Blah blah blah, as I expected. And seeing that everyone's responding to it, I just put up my own thing without thinking about it. And my post was, I said something to the effect of like, and you thought the Ned Stark thing was big, and like hashtag like I knew about the Red Wedding, a long time ago when I read the fucking book. That was my hashtag.
Right.
And like, I didn't think much about it, but here's the thing. A few people liked it, and then like a few people like actually, I don't know how serious they were, but actually like kind of like complained a little bit, like, "Oh, you gave it away from me. Oh, I haven't seen this yet, blah, blah, blah." And I was thinking like, that's true. I should have thought about it. I shouldn't have put up as like a
some
spoiler.
people might not have seen it yet.
Right. And that's true. I should have thought about it. But one thing that I mentioned, and I made a comment on this later, is that to really be honest about it, if there's something that's like in pop culture, that's either a book or a series or something like that, and it's really pertinent, like it's like happening right now, it's a current thing. If you really truly don't want to have spoilers happen, you got to be kind of vigilant about being on Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr and things like that. I really do think that. And what I brought up is that the whole, I guess, Harry Potter spoiler, as if no one knows, the whole thing with Dumbledore. Like I got that spoiled for me a long time before I read about it. And then when I got the 7th book of Harry Potter, I specifically tried to avoid a lot of media outlets. And you could say, "Oh, that's unrealistic," but I specifically tried not to hear about what was going to happen in that book. And I think, I don't know. I mean, what do you guys feel about that situation?
Well, I mean, I can agree because for the 6th and 7th books, I ordered it, and I got it on a Saturday, and so I wasn't accessing any internet stuff until I got it, and then I read it until I was done, and then I got online. So
Right.
in both cases, I was protecting myself.
It's tough. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, like whatever. I managed to avoid all spoilers for Harry Potter. I knew that somebody was going to die at the end of the 4th book. I actually predicted who was going to die at the end of the 4th book.
Oh, nice.
Just from knowing that one character would die. I correctly predicted who it would be.
That's reasonable because if you do know someone's going to die, the clues are there.
Yeah. So
spoilers.
But I managed to avoid spoilers for that. But the thing is, like, I mean, I think of something like, for example, the ending of The Sopranos. That was like because the Harry Potter books kind of, first of all, they're books, so it's not like everyone's experiencing them at exactly the same time. And also, that was really before Twitter really exploded.
True, too.
So, right. But like the thing with, and I'm not even on Twitter, but it was impossible for me. And I never watched The Sopranos, so I didn't care what happened in the end. But it was impossible for me to avoid finding out what happened in the last episode because everyone was talking about it and nobody cared about spoiling it. And it was just everywhere. So on the one hand, there's that, and I feel like people couldn't possibly avoid if they're not Game of Thrones watchers, but maybe they might watch it in the future or something. Like it would be impossible for them to not know that like something crazy and shocking and horrifying happens in this episode because it was everywhere. But
I didn't get to notice what I was saying.
At the same time, people who do watch the show, I think, have an obligation to not just like broadcast stuff all over the place,
Yeah.
in a really obvious way, like to just basically like just spill the beans and just assume that everyone watches the show within 24 hours of its airing, because not everyone does. Like you got to be careful about these
So,
things.
for
Like,
example,
it's not fair. to the other
Macy
people.
Williams, who plays Arya, she has her Vine account, which is kind of like that Twitter for a video thing, and she posted a video of herself talking with an American South accent, saying that her brother and mother were dead.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you saw it. He's like, they dead. They gone and got themselves killed. Like that. It was pretty funny. Adorable. But she shouldn't be spoiling it for people. Actor on the show. Seriously. Why are all these actors on the show having interviews about their characters getting killed? Ridiculous.
Well, listen, Maisie Williams can do whatever she wants because she's adorable.
Well, I suppose that's true.
Well, the interesting thing though is I also wonder how is anything not spoiled these days that's on like TV or movies. Books maybe you can keep it a little under, but it's like
You can avoid it if you are.
if you make a
trying to
concerted
avoid
effort.
it. Yeah.
It's just difficult.
Sometimes the problem is that sometimes you might see a header or headline that says about last night's thrilling, crazy, bloody episode of Game of Thrones.
No,
God damn it!
No. But if you go on YouTube, you immediately get you write Ned Stark. You see like Ned Stark dies or Robb Stark
Right,
dies.
yep.
It's like if you
You
type
have to
in
avoid YouTube. I know it's ridiculous.
that's just the way of the world. All right, we should probably wrap it up.
Let's wrap it up. I think we could say good episode, and we'll have to rediscuss it once we're finished with the season and just do a little bit of a retrospective. All right, nerd you later.
Nerd you later.
Catch you later.